From the glittering shores of the Somerset Isles hail the Altmer. With sharp ears, sharp features, and far sharper minds, the High Elves strive for mastery of the arcane few mortals could achieve, and for dominance over the inferior races of men and mer alike. While not as swift or nimble as their small-framed Bosmer cousins, they remain deceptive in their own ways, never ones to miss an opportunity, nor too proud to strike when one's foe is distracted, be it by a flanking charge or by brilliant blinding lightning. Though their mastery over magicka and coordinated battle tactics is near unrivaled, it comes at a high cost. For while these living conduits of arcane energies can have devastating results on an enemy's ranks, this double-edged sword leaves them susceptible to the very same fate. From the spires of Alinor, High Queen Irene sets out once more to bring another foreign shore to heal. By piece or by sword, all shall bend the knee before the superior might of the Altmer. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm Kurojaku, and today we'll be going over, as you can tell by the intro, my Elder Scrolls inspired High Elf / Altmer build that I've come up with. I will be going through all the basics, how it works, why I've chosen what I've chosen, so that if you want, you can follow along and copy this into your own game to either play or just have appear in your own random campaigns. With that, let's get into it. Starting with the racial traits. Now, one of the big things that kind of inspired me to actually make the Altmer when I did was the addition of flaws. Previously, we did not have these before the most recent patch, which introduced them. Flaws are essentially a debuff to your faction as opposed to a buff like the others, but it gives you one additional point to spend. If you've ever played Oblivion, you'll know High Elves are known to be weak to magic, so it was an obvious choice and a good time to test it out. However, on the flip side, this gives us 6 trait points to spend, which allowed us to do a lot of combinations that previously were not possible. You were limited to 5 only, so you could not combine 3 2 traits together all at once. So when designing this, my goal here was to make a glass cannon caster build and stack as many different effects that all work together at exactly the same time. So, Arcane Focus is an obvious one. We're playing with casters. This is going to affect all magic attacks. Not combat spells like Fulmination, that does not count, and not enchantments like on your melee weapons. This only affects the ranged attacks of battle mages, of ritualists, or are they called supports? I can't quite remember. The little Ankh symbol units, the support units, and any heroes that are casting some sort of magic. Next we have Sneaky. The main reason we're using Sneaky is because, well, for lore, instead of sneaky as in stealth, I went sneaky as in like deceptive and cheap shot kind of sneaky. That's my lore justification for mixing this in, because really I just wanted it because it worked well with the culture we're using, which we'll get to in a second. You can already see it on the screen if you look at the top, but we have the option to make our casters that we are building around do an AoE distracted debuff. The distracted debuff will make all attacks that hit those targets count as flanking attacks, regardless if you hit them in the front or the side. So 25% bonus damage on all flanking attacks, you already have the magic damage bonus, and you have a way to apply a lot of distracted very easily, as well as some tools built into our kit to also reduce status resistance to make that distracted land more consistently. And then the last thing we have is Overwhelm Tactics. All you have to do is move in a buddy system. That's it, plus 20% free crit for moving in a buddy system. It has that coordinated kind of feel to it that I wanted for my High Elves, because that is kind of their thing. They are coordinated as opposed to, you know, maybe like a Nord who's a little more savage and chaotic. Overwhelm seemed to fit. On to the culture. Obviously, we're going with the high culture for High Elves. It's just fitting. Also, the armor looks very Elder Scrolls Elven in a lot of, especially this chest plate and like these shoulder pieces here. I think it looks very perfect for the High Elf aesthetic. And these back here are our premium unit, our Awakener casters. We'll talk about units down the line at the end, so we're gonna move past that for now. But just know we're using the High faction. built mostly around these guys. This is going to give us 2 order affinity. We are playing a little bit with order, but at some point it kind of swings into being a full astral focused build. However, one thing to take note of is, depending on which way you want to play this, and there's no necessarily right way to do it, you can go either way. All of these are very useful buffs. And you don't even have to go pure good or pure evil, but you do want to stay in one of these 3. If you are slightly good or slightly evil, you get no benefit from this. It is good to kind of have a plan in mind. However, all of these are really good. If you want to play the all-out aggression, I guess like Thalmor style, right? You can go the evil route with the awakened units. It's just something to keep in mind. And our awakened trait that all of our units will spawn with, this is kind of our unique thing for the high faction. It activates any dormant traits on our units, and it's that dormant trait that will allow our supports and our battlecasters to inflict that distracted debuff, which we'll go into more depth with in a minute. Moving on to society traits. I'll come back to Hermit Kingdom. Mana Channelers. The front line for this faction are going to be magic summons. It's going to be Storm Spirits, maybe some Astral Serpents. The real big thing here, though, is that Magic Origin Unit XP. This will make more sense when we talk about tomes and units again. But this is very, very important for actually getting your Tier 1 Storm Spirits to hit max rank. And for the second one, we have Hermit Kingdom. Now, you may be worried about running this if you've never played Hermit Kingdom before, because once you get bordered by anyone, even your own second city or an outpost, you lose all of those buffs. The knowledge, the food, the production, the stability, all of it is gone. All right, and the grievances thing is kind of like whatever. However, the way you want to play Hermit Kingdom is use this as an early game steroid. You want to make as much value out of that early knowledge, food, production. Stability is a really good one. That extra stability lets you expand aggressively and spend that little, you see at the bottom there, you start with extra Imperium. That stuff's not easy to come by. I believe at the start of the game, you only start with 40 Imperium at a time per turn. So you are what? 3 turns ahead of the curb, essentially, on Imperium right off the start. You can use it to rush your city, to get an early forester up and start production on a food building or something. And then leverage quick research, building quickly, spreading your population quickly, and hopefully by the time you do actually border something, you've kind of gotten an early head start. However, lore-wise, Hermit Kingdom just kind of fits the whole high elf, hiding off on the Somerset Isles away from everyone thing. But yes, use as an early game steroid. Don't feel bad when it starts to drop off late game. That's okay. A lot of these traits really work early game, and then kind of fall off late game. That's kind of normal. This one just... Remember, you don't get any debuff. The important thing to note, you don't get a debuff for having an adjacent city. You just lose a buff, right? So it's not too bad. Now I'm going to skip over tomes. We're going to come right back to that. We're actually going to go over the ruler and the heroes, and then we'll come back to tomes. Right, we're going to go with a champion ruler. Now you may have seen in the intro, there's a little something something about me double casting spells in one turn, but I'm playing a champion ruler. We'll get to that in a second. That's a little treat you get if you send the ruler the right way. But we're playing champion. Just felt it fit. Mostly for the command ability. That's the main reason I chose champion over Wizard King. This will let me actually refresh my Awakeners after they move. The Awakener's big good spell, the big AoE, is a full cast spell, meaning you can't move and then use it on the same turn. It takes all of your action points. Command changes that. It lets you move an Awakener, let them shoot or something, then you can refresh all of their action points, and then let them use their... what's it called? Exposing Light, I think it's called? It'll let them use their big spell in range of a big pack of enemies after moving because you have command. You can't spam it, obviously, but that's the main idea that I had going into it. Editing Kuro here, completely forgot to mention, but when you finish a campaign and you ascend your hero or your ruler up, you can pick an ascendancy trait. The tier 5 Archmage Tome gives you a Ascendancy trait that essentially turns you into a Wizard King every turn that she is in the fight. So Ascended Sorcerer is how our champion ruler is doing Wizard King things and getting us double casting every turn. That's how. Completely forgot to mention it, so I'm just going to sneak this in right in the middle. As for the appearance, now this is her Ascended. She's got Ethereal and a couple other things going on. I will try to get a picture or load a game with Ascendancy traits turned off so that I can show you what she looks like without her Ascendancy, and I'll just like kind of sneak it on the screen here, right? Sword and Shield. Here's all the sliders for you to look at and peruse. I'll go nice and slow. You can just copy off if you wish. All the race sliders if you wish to copy off as well. There you are. That's for you. As well as the biography for you to copy. And yes, that is the intro. I thought it was a clever little idea to use this as the video intro. I'm going to be doing that going forward when I make more builds. Here's all that information you need. Lawbringer. Ambition. We'll talk about tomes in a second. City names. I just stole city names from Elder Scrolls Online. I'm going to be totally honest with you. There might be more that I need to add in here to finish her off. As for heroes, I only made 2. I will make the rest of the list on my own time, but these are kind of like a proof of concept. What I'm going to do is actually alternate. So I have an Elementalist and a Spellblade. The ruler herself is also a Spellblade. You didn't catch that earlier. And I'll just alternate these down the list. That way I always have an Elementalist or a Spellblade available, depending on if I want to focus one side or another. You could go through and meta these or make them custom or recreate Elder Scrolls characters if you wish. I did like little loose things. This guy's kind of like a scholar, so he's got instructor and everything. I made him a mage. She's more like a battle maiden. But the main thing you're doing with all your heroes is Spellblades, like your ruler, going down the lightning path, and Elementalists are going to go down the storm path and specifically going for Cloudburst. This is because you can do an AoE wet on top of things, making them weak to lightning, so that your melee units, if you're still using Storm Spirits, will do more damage. All your lightning spells do more damage. You kind of get the idea. It's not a super hero-focused faction, but they do play a role in any faction that you build. Now let's go over the tomes. In the recent update, this is also why I'm doing these kind of build videos now. I thought it'd be fun because we can actually program the AI to pick the right tomes, which makes them a lot more accurate and fun when you run into them in-game. So we're starting with Tome of Evocation. This is going to give us lightning blades for all our melee units. They can capitalize off wet if our heroes apply the wet debuff, we get bonus damage. If we apply electrify, which our Spellblades can do it, our Elementalists can do it, any of our casters can do it, and a lot of our combat spells can also apply electrify, which is going to boost the damage of lightning blades by 10%. On top of that, we also get lightning focus. This is going to add that lightning damage and electrify to our very, very powerful tier 3 Awakener units that we're built around. Fulmination is always a solid combat spell. Lightning Torrent is a pretty good world map spell when you use it right. I have a bad habit of forgetting to use these in general. Evokers, if they pop up on your tech tree and you have nothing else to really research worth researching and you don't have mana to shuffle, you might as well. They're not bad. For tier 1 units, tier 1 caster units, early game, they're not bad. However, you are pretty spread thin when it comes to what you research. You can't research everything at once, and they're not the top priority. I would prioritize lightning blades. Potentially, you can make an argument for going for evokers before focus if you know you're going to be kind of slow getting to tier 3, or if you want a lot of really cheap units to throw out. These are solid tier 1 battle mages, and you don't have any other source for those. Storm Spirits. These are your main frontline. You have also tier 1 shields that are really good for the high culture, but these are your main frontline. I'll get more into that in a bit. These are very, very good. If When these come up, this is your top priority. Lightning Blades is a top priority. Next is Tome of Zeal. The big thing about this that we are looking for is Legion of Zeal, another weapon enchant. It'll add spirit damage to all our storm spirits, our normal racial melee units, whatever we happen to use in the future. Zealots, never. There's no reason to make these in this faction. Fanatical workforce is niche. It can work. It's not a high priority. Inspiring Chant is decent. However, you can really only give strengthened to your melee units until tier 4 tomes, because only your melees will have zeal and not any of your casters. So it's kind of one of those, it is a really good spell, but not right now. I would take Legion of Zeal and Condemnation and kind of ignore the rest of these. However, Inspiring Chant is a really, really good one to take later in the game around tier 3 when you're trying to push towards tier 4 and you want a really cheap thing to research that'll take like a turn or two. This is the one, because it's a really good spell. 2 hex radius is pretty nice. Once all your casters have zeal, which they will later, it is a very nice spell to have. Tome of Summoning. This is going to basically be used to, 1, be able to buff our storm spirits that we're using, and 2, solve our support problem. We don't really have good supports. The Sun Priests aren't that good, and you're kind of not going to want to recruit them after a while. Instead, we'll have a combat spell to summon a support that kind of self-destruct heals. The support will also get any other support buffs that we have, which is nice. The other big thing are Astral Serpents, which are tier 3 fighter units that can teleport onto enemy backlines, making them very, very good and very annoying. The whole point is to harass the enemy and keep them off of your Awakeners. It also synergizes very well with your Awakeners, because Awakeners do inflict friendly fire, but Shattering Refuge here puts these Astral Serpents essentially in an immortal state where they cannot be inflicted with attacks or debuffs of any kind. So you can teleport one of these into a pack and then drop an Awakener on them, or vice versa. The rest of this, honestly, kind of whatever. You know, this isn't the bulk of your army. It might come in handy, but really we're just here for those 3 things. And the Summoning Wall is nice. Inquisition, the main thing we're here for is Mass Condemnation. AoE Condemn. Condemn makes units more susceptible to debuffs. And remember, this, anytime it doesn't say a % chance, that means it's a guaranteed chance. And it does not drop off, it's till the end of battle. So, Mass Condemnation, very strong skill. Tribunal, it's a decent city structure, you might as well, if you get the option. Lightbringers are niche, we'll talk about those later. Inquisitors are niche, we'll talk about those later. Inquisitors mark, we're not really using our physical units unless you decide to use Inquisitors. The only nice thing about that is, if the AI is controlling it and they decide to make a bunch of archers, at least their archers will buff themselves a little bit, so they won't be as useless. It is nice. It makes your ranged units inflict condemned and weakened, but more importantly, condemned. So, but that's not a 100% chance of inflicting, so do it that way you will. Tome of Amplification. This is a very, very potent tome. This is when we start getting a serious power spike going on. Now, real quick, we'll go over the ones that are bad. Amplified Arrows, it buffs your physical units. If they're there, great. If they're not, skip it, whatever. Amplification Pylon, it is kind of niche. If I ran as Ascended, then you can pull it off, because you can drop this down and then do like a Fulmination and also have a Pylon in their backline to kind of serve as a distraction. Otherwise, I think they're kind of mid, unless you're really, really focused and have really, really good combat spells, which ours are okay, but they're nothing special. On the topic of that Chain Lightning, it is a very good spell. It is nice, but it's not as destructive as like some of the Tome of the Crucible spells or anything. So for this build, you can make it work. Not my first choice. However, what we really, really... Oh, Amplify Minds also can kind of pass over. Like, it's nice. You can kind of pass over it. The main things we're looking for here is Astral Blood, which is buffing all of our units except for our summons. Whenever a spell is cast, you get increased crit. This can stack up to 3 times. And since we can potentially cast 2 spells in one turn, this gets to stack up pretty quickly. And doubly important, Frenzy for all of our casters and +1 range. Frenzy increases their attacks, or well, it gives them Strengthen, which increases their attack whenever they deal damage. Which means they get 3 stacks of Frenzy if they shoot 3 times with their basic skill, or 1 stack of Frenzy for casting the AoE, not per unit, just per cast. So even if you hit 1 unit with your AoE, you get 1 Frenzy. If you hit 4 units with your AoE, you still only get 1 Frenzy. Tome of Teleportation, this is mostly a support tome, and really what we're here for is the easy access to teleporters that essentially don't have a cost. The Trade Relay is kind of nice because it helps with our gold economy. Really what we're here for are Phase Beasts as an emergency replacement summon. If any of your really good tier 3s go down, you can summon these. The other big thing is Phasing Enchantment. This lets our mages move very quickly, which is important to get them in range, and it also gives them further increased lightning damage and a further increased chance of inflicting Electrified onto targets on top of the lightning focus we got early on. So charged phased plus Tome of Evocation is a very good combination for getting a lot of dot stacks going. Then we have Tome of Supremacy. This is when you get Zeal. This is when Inspiring Chant starts to actually be pretty useful with Supreme Magic. It also makes killing units explode. Now this cannot chain reaction, unfortunately, but it is very, very strong. It is so cool, and it works on the AoE. I put a clip in the intro. It does work on the AoE where it just kind of, you do a big splash, and if anything dies in it, they do their own AoE on top of it. It's kind of brutal. Anthem of Victory, also very, very strong. You could argue that you don't need Inspiring Chant anymore. However, this is much cheaper, 25 casting points compared to Anthem of Victory's 50, so it's half the cost. But in a big battle with 3 banners late game and everyone's spread out, full morale buff, 3 strengthen stacks. Remember, you are also getting fortune stacks as well from Astral Blood. This is a very strong spell. And the Exemplars. This is your other really good tier 4 frontline unit that you're going to want to use. They are very fast, they are very tanky shield units, and they have a very strong buff to give Rally and Strengthened. If you have at least 1 Birdman in each stack and Anthem of Victory, you can get all of your troops up to 5 Strengthened turn, well, I guess not turn 1, but turn 2 when you get spells available. You also get Rally, which is further morale, and morale, if you don't know, leads to crit rate. So you have all these morale buffs, you have all these strengthen buffs, you get morale for more crit, you stand near each other for more crit, you have astral focus for more damage, you do increased damage on flanks. You see where this is going. This is when things start to steamroll. Monumental Supremacy is fine, go for it, and Condemn Army is awesome. This is kind of like what we wanted to go along with Lightning Torrent. If you wind both of these spells up and kind of have them banked and drop them on a ruler army, for example, like you got to deal with a dragon ruler or something, you can snipe them with both of these. And they will go into the battle with -1 lightning resistance and condemned on that stack for the whole fight, making them weak to both of your things. Astral Convergence, not as potent. That's why we're taking it second. However, an extremely strong siege project, right? All units suffer 1 resistance, so all your magic damage does even more. I'd rather just summon a Siphoner, personally, than do this, right? Either I want a Siphoner to heal, or I don't. And if I want to do damage, I would just do one of my damage spells. Not the biggest fan of it. Same for Astral Shattering. It's nice, but typically the things you're trying to use this on, these target enemy province things don't work very well because the AI always builds Spelljammers. And so you can't cast these unless you go in and break the Spelljammer. So, the real reason we want this tome. Cascading Power. right? It's a sustained world spell, and then once you enter combat, every single turn, a random enemy unit takes 20 lightning damage. And for each stack, another one. So at turn 2, 2 random enemies take lightning damage, and I believe it can be the same enemy. Tier 3, 3 random enemies take damage, and this is for every fight, and you can combine this with all enemies having reduced resistance in sieges. You can combine this with Lightning Torrent from Tome of Evocation. It gets a little out of hand. Astral Attunement for a major transformation is nice. Getting positive status effects is whatever. I don't love these because it's kind of random. You don't really know what you're gonna get. It's not something I plan around. Really, I just thought it looked cool. I wanted the rest of the tome anyways. They do look like Elder Scrolls ghosts now. They do look like ghosts from Elder Scrolls, which is nice. And the ethereal unit type is not bad. Being immune to Immobilized on a caster build is pretty cool. And then finally, Tome of the Archmage. I mean, I'm not really going to go into Tome of the Archmage at all. This is your win more button. Do with it what you will. And that is all I have for today. I didn't want to make this too long of a video. I didn't want it to become an hour long, so I'm not going to go super in depth into build order or how to play it too much. I'll leave that to you to figure out. If you have any questions, you can ask them in the comments. By all means, I'll be happy to answer them. If enough people want a follow-up play guide for the build, I guess. I don't know what you'd call it. I mean, you can let me know that as well. Otherwise, let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any recommendations for other builds that I might do in the future. I already have some lined up, so it may take me some time to get to them. I already know what the next few will be. But feel free to let me know any ideas you have in mind for me to try and figure out. Otherwise, liking, subscribing, all the usual YouTube stuff. Thank you again for sitting through all this. I hope you enjoy it. Hope you enjoy the build, whether you copy it over, use it for yourself, or put it in a campaign, or just enjoyed getting ideas from it. All that being said, until next time.